her screen.
All right, I think we are on Facebook.
We are live, yeah.
Yes. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portuguese American Art Gallery Meet the Artist session on behalf of the Embassy of Portugal in Washington, D.C., PALCUS, the Chamber of Commerce, and FLAD. My name is Sandra Pires, and I am the Cultural Attaché at the Embassy of Portugal in Washington, D.C. We are here today to meet the artist Marina Carreira. This session is going to be streamed on Facebook as well as on Zoom. So please ask your questions on the chat box below. We also have here with us Angela Costa Simões from PALCUS, who will be co-hosting this session with me. Angela, would you like to introduce yourself and the artist we are here to meet today, Marina Carreira?
Sure, thank you so much, Sandra. Hi, everybody. Angela Simões, chair of PALCUS, based in California, and excited to have Marina Carreira here. Is a queer socialist Luso-American poet artist from Newark, New Jersey. She is the author of Tantu Tantu, forthcoming in 2022 from Kavankari Press. I think I got that right. Save the Bathwater, Get Fresh Books in 2018, and I Sing to That Bird, Knowing It Won't Sing Back from Finishing Line Press in 2017. She has exhibited her art at Morris Museum, ArtFront Galleries, West Orange Arts Council, Monmouth University Center for the Arts, among others. Her work investigates identity as it relates to gender, urban, queer, and bicultural first-generation Luso-American spaces. You can keep up with her at Hello Marina Carreira, CARREIRA.com. Back to you, Sandra.
Okay, very well. So I just would like to mention to our audience that there is the possibility to pose questions to Marina in the chat box below. Marina, welcome. And I don't know if you want to show us a little bit of your work, and then maybe we can go to the questions. We can ask you some questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Angela. I love hearing my name in Portuguese, and it's an honor to be here with you both today and with everyone watching. I'm so honored, like I said, not only to have my work featured in the Portuguese American Art Gallery, but to share space with you all tonight, to talk a little bit about my artistic practice, my art, and really tonight the focus will be on the Portuguese women that inspire this art. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And I'm taking the work I'm going to be showing today, or that I'm showing right now, is the work that is up live on the art gallery. So you can just check it out after this session if you want to look at it more carefully, because I will be sort of going through it as slowly as possible, but also for the sake of time, rather quickly. As Angela mentioned, I am a Portuguese American artist, native and based in Newark, New Jersey, and a lot of my work reflects my cultural upbringing as a bicultural person in America, and a lot of my Portuguese heritage informs not only my written work, but especially my artistic work. And for the sake of the session, I will be talking about, like I mentioned before, the Portuguese women who are the muses for this art. The three that are the first, in my practice, usually are what I call my matriarchs, which is my mother, my grandmother, and even the city of Newark, who I think of as a woman itself, right? So to look at some of the works that explore these women, I use digital collage in this piece here in the blue and white that takes a look at my grandparents, and in this one, my grandmother, who were immigrants who came to Newark in 1974 for obviously opportunity and to create lives here that would help them to for prosperity, essentially, right? To sort of cement their own American dream, along with my mother. So these two pieces that are digital collages, this blue and white one, and then this one here, feature my mother and my grandmother, as well as my grandfather and my father. But in particular, no, the women sort of are at the forefront of these images, because they were the ones that I felt tethered, all of us as a family, to this American experience, right? As, as immigrants, as folks from another country who are trying to create a life, with so much uncertainty, and without a real grasp on the language that it takes in order to not only validate your experience, but document it. So to me, art enabled me to sort of give voice to the experience that they never talked about, right? Which was, what was this Luso-American dream all about? What did it mean to be two women who were immigrants, coming to a country where they didn't know anyone, who they didn't know the language, right? Whose only real investment was in, in work, right? In labor. So I sort of superimposed their images against images in the Ironbound, which is a historically Portuguese American area in Newark, New Jersey, where I was born and raised. To the left is an image that I call Our Lady of Newark. And I wanted to celebrate Newark as a matriarch for me, not only as a muse artistically, but as a place that I really consider home, where I was able to forge my identity, not only as a Luso-American woman and writer, but as an artist. I started practicing art professionally after being inspired by Newark and all of its artists. And I wanted to create a saint. I do a whole series of Our Lady artworks, and in this particular one, I looked at what I imagine would be an Our Lady figure for the city of Newark. And this manifested, it's a mixed media piece, which incorporates collage, acrylic, marker, and a bunch of other materials. So my mom, my grandmother, Newark, these are the matriarchs who I find they find themselves in a lot of my work, mostly because it is through them that I'm able to sort of understand my own experience as a woman, and as a daughter of immigrants, right? And what that means as an artist, as a mother, as a writer, as a citizen, essentially. These next two pieces I'm going to talk about were inspired by the women from my father's town. My father is from Nazaré in Portugal, which is a coastal town that is now super popular for the 100-foot wave that McNamara surfed. And it is now considered a big surfing hotspot. But while I was growing up, I spent every summer in Portugal. And I really got to know and have a fondness for the women of those towns, which are called nazarenas. Nazarenas are essentially the wives of the fishermen that would go out and obviously catch fish to then sell. They were also fishmongers, right? Not only did they didn't just sit around and wait for their husbands to sort of bring home the labor, the fruits of their labor, but they also were integral in the commerce, right, in the sustainability of the economics of the family. Nazarenas are also cultural icons. They not only uphold the traditional dress of the folks from that time, right, or from Nazaré, but they have their own language. They have very distinct dispositions. They're essentially the historians, I believe, of that area. And they came to me as muses when I think about sort of not only women's positions when it comes to work and when it comes to being sort of the storytellers of our times, but also the idea of suffering, right? And the idea of waiting, and what does that look like for women, right? And how we often romanticize suffering, and we often romanticize the idea of the woman that waits, right, for her partner. And in this case, specifically talking about, fishermen, that relationship between waiting for someone to bring home the very thing that sustains you, but also their parts, right, in this work that get erased. So I really wanted to bring visibility to them. The fishermen are considered the heroes of the sea, but they wouldn't be able to do what they do without, right, the wives that they come home to. And I really wanted to honor these women as the cultural icons that they are. So while my father is from Nazarea, my mother is from Fatima. So I grew up very much aware and in conversation with the narrative of Fatima, right? The miracle of Fatima, and the shepherd children of Fatima. I think I knew about the Pashto English before I knew about any other American figures, really. So, their stories were told to me as these children that were favored by God, and that sort of were the messengers of Our Lady. And as I grew older, and now as a mother, I looked at them and in their particular situation as these not only historical figures, cultural icons for Portuguese history, but I really wanted to look at them for what they were sort of not looked at as, which was children, which was female children, right, who we knew not only back in those times were not afforded any real opportunity for education or to work in the industries of their choice, but were really they were really trapped in their social expectations, right? And what I thought a lot about was their suffering as well, and how they were essentially robbed of their childhood. I know, again, that mythology that surrounds them, of them being these children that were favored by God, and looked at as now legends, right, in Portuguese history, especially in religious history. I wanted to think about, and I wanted to explore the ways in which they were denied, opportunity, that they were essentially sacrificial lambs to this story, right? And how they never really had a childhood. The youngest one, Jacinta, died at 10, right? And Lucia went on to live extremely cloistered, achieving a certain level of fame, but again, never having a story outside of just being this messenger of God, right? Never being able to live outside of the narrative that was essentially bestowed upon her. So I was thinking about that, and the ways in which we are handed stories, the ways in which women are told what their story is going to be instead of being able to define it for themselves. So they are my little muses, and I think about them a lot when I think about the ways in which we are robbed of opportunities, or in the ways in which we are limited in our abilities to really follow our dreams and to lead realized lives because of prescribed gender roles and societal expectations. And I also, in my Our Lady series, this was the first one that was created, the one on the right, and it's Our Lady of the Revolution. And I really wanted to honor Our Lady and make her a feminist figure, in terms of, there was a lot of tension, obviously, in the times of Salazar, and before the revolution, in terms of where religion, the role that religion played in society, right? In Portuguese society at the times. But I reimagined Our Lady as the leader, or one of the leaders in this revolution, for freedom. And I also wanted to honor one of the resistance fighters from that time, which is Caterina Femia. So I have her there too. And I really wanted to spotlight the women that we don't think about enough when we talk about Portuguese history in terms of the revolution. Most of the figures that are talked about are male, right? And I think we forgot the women, right, that were involved in the struggle. I wanted to highlight not only Caterina, but also reimagine Our Lady as one of the fighters for freedom for Portugal. And this is where Our Lady of the Revolution came in. And I think about Our Lady as a feminist icon in many situations. In all of my series where I use Our Lady, she is essentially a figurehead, an inspiration for victims of displacement, victims of oppression, victims of sexual assault, victims of sort of any of the things that affect and displace and marginalize women in many situations. These next two photos are these next two mixed media pieces are also talk about and highlight sort of the suffering of the Pastorinhos again. But lastly, here I have one of my all-time favorite muses that I use in a lot of my art. I have about 1, 2, 3. I have about 4 Amalia pieces, and this is one of my favorite ones. Amalia not only is an inspiration to me as a writer, but also as a woman, right? As a feminist woman. She's a beacon of resilience and a beacon of empowerment. And she was restless and ruthless in her striving to really leave the legacy she wanted to leave behind. And coming from such hard, circumstances from absolute poverty and from very complicated family dynamics, she really forged a path ahead and remains one of my biggest inspirations. So, for lack of a better word, I consider her to be one of the most badass women in history, and to have her be I think the most important cultural icon that Portugal has. I think she's the mother of all my art. I really like to create pieces in which I capture her in what I feel is her essence. And in this piece, I really wanted to highlight her roots from Alfama with the 2 Azulejo pieces, and then just really touch on the golds and the blues in order to sort of touch on her royal aspect in Portugal as the Queen of Fado, right? And then I wanted to create this silhouette that's sort of fantastical and also phantasmic, to show that even though she is not here in body, she still remains in spirit. And anytime I hear a Fado song, whether she's singing it or not, I hear her voice, right? So she is in, I think, every single artistic practice that a Luso-American engages in, and for me, she will always be a muse. So between my grandmother and from my grandmother to the Pastorinhos to Newark to Amalia, Portuguese women have really helped me dig into sort of my own my own experience as a bicultural woman, even as a queer woman, right? And what does it mean to live forms of life that, you know, to quote Amalia, estranha forma de vida, what does it mean to live, you know, a life that is not complicated, that is not simple, that is complicated, right? That is filled with all sorts of tensions, that, you know, has, you know, all of these sort of obstacles in front of it. And tapping into their spirits and tapping into their experiences help me think of new ways to achieve resilience and to essentially, you know, move forward with, you know, whatever dream it is that I want to create. So that's my practice when it comes to the Portuguese women and how they inspire my work. And all of these pieces are all mixed media. They all involve collage, oil, pastel, marker, and spray paint. They're all either on canvas or paper. And this is just one of the mediums that I use to explore Portuguese womanhood and what it says about the complexities of living.
Thank you so much, Marina, for showing your work, which is beautiful, by the way. And yeah, and I was curious to know when and how did you started painting?
So I can't. So I've always sort of engaged in art, right? From a very young age, I was always drawing. I was always doodling. I mean, I look back at old high school notebooks and I just see drawings everywhere, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't paying very close attention in this class. But also, right, this was the way of processing information. So I've always used art as a way to process whatever it is I was listening to or trying to capture. But in terms of painting, I say I'd started painting in 2008, 2009. But I didn't really take it seriously until 2016 when I interviewed a local, also Luso-American artist, Lilian Ribeiro, for the Luso-American newspaper, who I was writing for at the time. And, you know, Lily captivated me. Her work captivates me. And, you know, I told her, I said, because she asked me if I do art, and I said, well, no, I'm a writer. I mean, I like art and I've done some art, but I don't know if I can do that. You know, I'm a writer. And she was like, well, you know, you don't know until you do it. And who said you only have to be one thing? And that really stuck with me. So I think it was after that conversation that I was given permission and sort of encouragement by this fellow artist to really start my artistic practice. And I started with digital photography, and then just made my way back to the canvas and really dedicated myself to visual art as a practice.
Well, I love as soon as you put the Amalia piece up, it was like, oh my gosh, I love that. So I don't know if you sell prints or anything, but it is really beautiful.
Yes, I have prints.
So, you know, one thing that you mentioned and is something that has come up in past conversations is not only with art, but with just, I guess, passing along some encouragement or helping the next generation come up, is that we sort of all have a responsibility to encourage somebody that we see is going down a path. And so thanks to that fellow artist who told you, why do you have to only be one thing, right? So I just wanted to highlight that moment because had she not said that to you, who knows how long it would have been till you found your path back to art, right? So kudos to her.
Absolutely. And she really, I mean, I can't speak enough about Lilian Ribeiro. And if you don't know her work, definitely, you know, search it. And she will be part of the art gallery one day, I know for sure. She really works a lot when it comes to documenting women's experiences, immigrant Portuguese women's experiences in terms of widowhood, because she is a third generation widow. Her grandmother lost her husband at a very young age. Her mother lost Lily's father at a very young age too. Lily was a baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Lily just recently lost her mother too. So widowhood has been huge in her family. So she really explored that, and she's explored so much about Portuguese women's sexuality and our relationships to our body and what we're allowed to be and say and look like, and our relationship to food. I mean, she really interrogated Portuguese identity. Or Luso-American identity, I should say, in a way that I found really compelling. And I was like, wow, I have a lot of questions about us too, right? And I don't know how to really write about them. So, let me sort of go to the canvas and see what that looks like.
Mhm.
So yeah, she was definitely, a huge inspiration.
That's amazing. We'll have to go look her up for sure and invite her to be a part of the gallery. Can you talk a little bit about the process of making your work? So, when you start, do you have a specific thing in mind that you're trying to create? And then does it evolve? Does it kind of change? Yeah, like you have one thing in mind and then it goes. And then how do you decide what materials, you'd like to use?
Right. So I think with my writing, my process is the same as for my visual art. I'm very project based. So I always feel odd to creating something individual pieces like in silos. Like I wish I could be that way, but I always feel like a lot of my work wants to tell a story and it can't just be told in one thing, right? Or one canvas or sort of one painting, or when it comes to writing with a few poems. Normally when if I'm writing or creating, it's towards a book length project, and it's the same with art. Usually I have to have a series in mind. Once I start something, I have to sort of explore all the ways, right, the story can be told. And the first series I ever created was the Our Lady series, and I have like Our Lady of America, Our Lady of Consent, Our Lady of the Revolution, Our Lady of Pride, um, Our Lady of Quarantine. I just growing up, right, Nossa Senhora, Our Lady, it was like she was everywhere. She was in my bedroom, she was in our stories, she was in our day to day. I was taught to pray to her. So and as a queer woman, I always wrestled with my faith. Like, how can I be part of a faith that essentially historically marginalizes me and tells me I shouldn't be this way? So I said, how can I sort of gather this faith? How can I make this faith my own, right? How do I reclaim it? That's the word. How do I reclaim my faith? So I looked at Our Lady, and I said, well, you know what, I believe that Our Lady is a feminist, and so I wanted to explore all the ways that she empowered and supported and loved and protected women, right, in all sorts of situations. So if that started with Our Lady of the Revolution, and then I was like, oh, let me think of an Our Lady that would protect. I have an Our Lady of me too, right? So Our Lady that would protect like sexual assault survivors, Our Lady that would protect children, Our Lady that would protect people that are quarantining from a pandemic. I knew that there was so many manifestations of Our Lady, so that sort of happened. I have a series of work that is called The Future is Fluid, that looks at beings that are genderless and what our future would look like if we didn't have assigned genders. I have a series that I just recently worked on called Me and Miro, where I use the famous artist Miro's work and in my own work, collage work, and sort of explore ways that my body and has changed in conversation with my gender presentation, in conversation with my understanding of femininity. So yeah, when I start something, I feel like I have to flesh it out in many different ways. And as far as materials go, when I first started working my way back to the canvas, I just used like the paints my kids had that I had for them, crafts, spray paint that I had used for some like, I think, domestic project I was working on, because I'm very much believe that I think that art is not an elitist practice. I think art is a practice for everyone. So I like to be resourceful, and I use whatever I have at hand. So almost all the artists I admire use found objects, right, in their art. So the materials I always gravitate to usually is acrylic, but I use oil. I love paper. I love collage. I love photography. I love marker. So those are the materials that I'm inclined to use because they just feel familiar to me. But you know, I don't have the technique. I'm self-taught. I don't know how to paint the right way. I don't know how to create in a way that I'd probably learn if I was formally trained. But I think that that's what really makes my work authentically me, right? Because I feel like anything I know and anything I'm documenting or processing comes from this experience of just learning by experience, right? Anything I've learned about myself in the world has come from just living in it, right? Which is essentially the immigrant story, right? We've survived because we were able to learn and gather and keep moving forward. And I feel like that's reflective not only in my work, but in the way I make my work.
Yeah, it looks like your art is very embedded in the Portuguese culture. I don't know if it's all your work or not, but I remember when we were doing the practice session, you mentioned that you were too American to be Portuguese and too Portuguese to be American. And I would like to know, how do you feel this balance right now? And well, it doesn't need to be a balance, or I'm just asking, but how was it to grow with this feeling?
So yeah, sort of straddling those two worlds was always very complicated. Like I said, so I was, you know, I'm the daughter of immigrants. I was raised mostly by my grandparents who didn't speak English, so my first language was Portuguese, even though I was born here. And I spoke Portuguese fluently at home, and I spoke English obviously in school. So you know, having that existence, having to think in two languages, having to operate in two cultures, you know, at first was very frustrating, right? Because it always made me feel like an outsider. You know, at school, if I'd bring, you know, something weird or fishy for lunch, right, it was just, oh, you're that weird girl, right? Who eats those things, you know, you don't eat regular food. And then I'd go to Portugal and I wouldn't know, you know, a song, or I wouldn't know a story, or I wouldn't know, you know, a cool word that they were using. So I'd feel like an outsider there, right? And for years, I struggled with, well, you know, am I Portuguese or am I American? What am I, right? Until I think it is through my artistic practice that I'm like, oh, I'm neither. I'm both. I'm this very separate identity that is Luso-American, right? And we have our own culture. That, you know, that has parts inherited from Portugal, and parts that are inherited from our American experience. So we are our own culture. You know, I always tell Portuguese people, I'm not Portuguese, I'm Luso-American. That's very different. And I always tell Americans, I'm not American, I'm Portuguese American. It's very different. And I think my artistic practice, and as well as my writing, has helped me be able to give language to that identity, and give image to that identity. Just like, you know, I've seen pictures of Nazarenas being depicted before, but I wanted to depict them in this way that is seen, you know, them through the lens of the child of immigrants, right? Of a Portuguese, you know, of someone who lives in a different country, is culturally, you know, from that country as well, but again, has a very different life experience. So yeah, it's very exciting to now be able to say, oh no, this is my identity. You know, I'm both, and I don't have to feel like I have to choose either or.
That's great.
I think a lot of people would probably identify with that very much, kind of not feeling fully one or the other. And that experience you described of not knowing the recent slang or a song in Portugal, but then also having this weird food. I know my husband actually had that happen to him, you know, where he takes a bacalhau, you know,
Yeah.
for lunch, and everyone's giving him steak face.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Facebook. It's from Inez Isabel. Hi, Marina. Have you been able to show your work to anyone in Nazaré, and what has been their reaction?
Not formally. I think I don't even know what would happen if I should. Portugal. I think that's like the epitome of like fame for me. No, but my family in Portugal has seen it, and I think their friends see it. So to me, that's good enough. Just the fact that, I think my aunt made a comment today on Facebook, and it was like, you never forget Portugal, and that's really beautiful. And to me, that's the highest compliment. So, I'd love to show my work in Portugal. I think that's one of my dreams. Just to be able to show our motherland, right, that its children not only don't forget them, right, but also really memorialize the traditions and the experiences in a way that I think really celebrates Portugal for its good things, right? Because we have a very complicated history. In being able to celebrate sort of the beautiful aspects of our history through art, I think as a cultural ambassador, I think that's, and as an artist, that's my job as a Luso-American artist.
So you're a writer as well, you've published a few books.
Mhm.
How do the two sort of go hand in hand? Do you ever work on something where the theme is incorporated into both, or like you're writing a book and so then the themes in the book then start to appear in your artwork? And how do those two kind of work together?
It's interesting because the two forms never really marry. There's things that I can explore visually and through art that I don't necessarily have the language or the words for when it comes to poetry. I do like using text and words in my art. I am thinking about future projects where I do include my visual work in a collection, right, with my written work. But the two kind of operate, separately. I I like to say I'm bi in so many senses, right? Which is terrible because I hate the binary. I feel like binary shouldn't exist, right? I believe in spectrums and stuff, but I do think like just that there's parts of I'm many things in one. I feel like this is just another way to do something, and the two never really speak to each other. I mean, they don't have direct conversations. Poetry and my art and my poetry don't have direct conversations. They just explore different facets of me, and my experience and my documenting and my witnessing of the world a little bit differently. Like I don't write poems about Fatima or my understanding of the shepherd children's experience, because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that in words. I know how to do that visually. I know how to tell that story through canvas. So yeah, they operate very, very separately, interestingly enough. But maybe one day I'll marry them better. I mean, there's always room to do that.
Do you also talk about your identity in your books, like your Luso-American identity in the?
Yes. So in the first collection is a chapbook, and it's all Fado poems. And it's all poems inspired by Fados, in particular Amalia's Fados. So I wrote against that, and a lot of the themes are family and love, and home. So that sort of speaks to one aspect, one cultural aspect. Save the Bathwater is literally a narrative about a bicultural child growing up Luso-American in Newark, New Jersey, right, and sort of navigating this bicultural existence, right, and the family dynamics and immigrant experience for families when they're trying to figure out their lives, right, in this new world. And this book that's coming out, Tantu Tantu, is really it's a manifesto of love, queer love, right, between two Portuguese queer women. And what does that look like, right? What does it look like to love in the face of a culture that doesn't accept you, and how you work to becoming accepted, right? Or you create a space for yourselves where you can still love your culture, right, and love your people, even if they don't necessarily love you. So Tantu Tantu explores that as well. So there's no divorcing sort of my Luso-Americanness from any of my work. It's there. And at first I was like, am I going to be writing poems about being Luso-American or being, an immigrant's daughter for the rest of my life? Probably, right? Because, it's my experience. So I feel like you can only really write what you know, and that, the work has to be authentic. So I speak from that place, always, whether it's my art or whether it's not. And even work that's not directly, right, like Portuguese or Portuguese inspired, it's still Portuguese or in Luso-American, because I am Luso-American and I am the creator of the work. So it is still speaking to some aspect of Luso-American experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you another question. Besides Lilian and Miro, which other artists inspired your work?
So I mean, right off the top of my head, the greats, right? Frida Kahlo, we already said Miro, Basquiat, George O'Keeffe, I love, and recently, I wouldn't say recently, but for the past, I'd say 10 years, I've really been looking at Portuguese artists, women artists, right? Because I'm starting a doctoral program where I really want to work with exploring Portuguese women artists. And so Paula Rego, Lena Almeida, Joana Vasconcelos, Wested Rita, Grada Quilomba, there's one more. There's another one. I mean, there's so many, and they're doing amazing work, right? Or they have done and are doing amazing work, and they explore so many facets, not only of womanhood, right, but of citizenship and what does it mean to be Portuguese woman or of Portuguese descendancy, right? And what are the things they're speaking to? So they are big inspirations for me. And I call Newark is my artistic home, and it is the home of so many brilliant artists. So outside of Liliana Ribeiro, there's Gabe Ribeiro, who's doing amazing work in Newark. Like when New Year, I believe I'm saying their name right. If not, I believe it was Lunar New Year, is doing amazing work. Danielle Scott is one of my favorite artists. She's amazing. Queen Moore is an amazing artist. There's so many newer, Luisa Pinzon, Doris Casoilo. There's so many Portuguese and Latinx and Black American artists in Newark that are doing amazing things, and they inspire me every day. And they are probably the ones that keep me interested in art and motivated to always keep creating alongside of their work. But yes, Newark itself is a city of art, and all of her artists inspire me.
Great.
Are you currently working on another series or planning one?
So no, whatever I've produced up until this point, I'm either showing, and I'm not pausing, but because I am starting this program, I know I'm going to be producing work for the program. So I'm very interested in seeing sort of what direction it takes me. And, I'm very excited about this program because the focus is specifically on fine arts and media. So where I have formal training when it comes to writing with my MFA in creative writing, I'm very excited to have formal training or academic training when it comes to art. So I feel like I have a very well-rounded experience and really learn craft and technique and history. So I say I'm not working on anything now, but I think probably 2 or 3 weeks from now that story might change.
We have a comment from Facebook from Leonor Alvin Brazão, fellow artist. It is wonderful to have two creative outlets. One tells stories without words, and other translates personal imagery with words. Very nice. Leonor is great. We love her.
I want to quote that for any academic work. I feel like I'm going to supply. I'm like, this is it. So thank you for that comment. That was amazing. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful to have two places that I can sort of lean into to explore and document and bear witness.
I was thinking that you would love to go to an exhibition that I was recently in Lisbon, and I saw at the Gulbenkian Foundation. That is, I didn't remember the name, so I saw the exhibition, but I didn't remember the name. It's All I Want, Portuguese women artists from the 1900s to 2020.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
All the artists that you mentioned are there.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that'd be amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think someone sent me that another amazing, brilliant Portuguese American Black artist named Maria Estrela, who's actually in the art gallery as well. Her work is in the gallery as well, who you should absolutely have an artist talk with as well, because Maria Estrela is amazing. She sent me that link and she was like, I was like, oh my God, I wish I can, be there. But absolutely, it's a dream. My visits to Portugal usually are, I think, part of the Luso-American duty, which is visit all the family members, right? And kind of hang out in the hometowns that we're part of. I feel like, it's like there's a contract or something, this invisible contract that was drafted at our birth that said that, we have to go there maybe every other year and, visit like this Dia's house and this Dia's house. And that's how our vacations go. But I hope to, visit Portugal, 1 year at least as an artist, and just fully sort of immerse myself there and really see what's happening, in Portugal in terms of art, and what are young Portuguese artists creating. What is that saying about, Portuguese culture, Portuguese society, especially women, right? Especially queer Portuguese women artists. I'd really love to sort of be part of that world. So that's one of my goals one day, is to just visit Portugal as an artist and not as a niece.
Maybe for your doctorate, you will have the possibility to do that, or a residence in an artistic residence, or yeah, that's
From your
That'd
mouth.
be great.
Yeah.
So we have a few minutes left, and to wrap it up, what would be some, bits of advice to, whether it's someone who is in their soul knows that they need to be an artist but are not sure how to get started, or maybe they're scared to get started. Also, there might be somebody who they're kind of a doodler, right? But maybe people in their lives are telling them that art isn't a real career. What kind of advice would you give folks in our community, especially young Portuguese Americans, that, need a little push, need some inspiration?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, art is a valid form of employment. I will say until I die. But I understand that the hesitancy and sort of the fear and the frustration. I come from very wonderful parents who don't necessarily understand art's purpose or value it in the same way. They're very practical. I always say it's the immigrant experience. If it doesn't put food on the table or pay the bills, what's it for, right?
Yep.
But I think, and that's where I think the American part of me sort of steps in and has a different response. I think growing up, as children of the revolution, right? Because my father was coming up during that time, and so was my mom. I think things like art, and music and theater, they were considered, sort of impractical and elitist, right? And certainly not professions, right? For anybody that's respectable. And maybe that's not the case in Portugal, but certainly here, right? As the children of immigrants, we are very much encouraged to find jobs that will financially benefit us, right? And that will, a career, right? A trade, something that will, pay off your mortgage, right? And buy your cars, and sort of that's the Luso-American dream, right? Unfortunately for my parents, I didn't really subscribe to that. I think everyone is an artist. I think we're all artists. The art just looks different. My mother was a hairdresser for years, and to me, she's an artist with hair. My father worked construction all his life, and he could build and fix things. That was his art. My grandfather was a tailor. That was his art. So was my grandmother. She can cook and she can do all these other things. That was her art. We are all artists, right? So for those who are doodlers, who are just sort of, they know that they have something that they want to create and share with the world, let the fear lead you. I sort of think about the things that scare you the most and really give them life. That's what sort of started me writing, the things that bothered me, that scared me, that worried me, that caused anxiety for me. I I wrote about them, right? And you know, stories came out. And it's the same thing with art. Don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about being right. Don't worry about not being trained. Don't worry about any of that. You know, as if what you create makes you feel good and tells your story the way you want to tell it, that's art, right? And yeah, I think it's all about, you know, just giving yourself permission to create. We don't give ourselves permission to be more than one thing, right? We think that, you know, if we're a mechanic, that's all we do. I know nurses that are poets, you know, I know mechanics that are writers. We are we contain multitudes, right? So I think allowing ourselves to really freely explore those possibilities in whatever way it comes, you know, and to know that, you know, what we do is art, you know. Again, my friends, you know, they're like, oh, but I'm not artistic, but they can make, you know, all of the things on Pinterest, and they can create all these cool things for their kids' birthday parties. And I'm like, you guys are artists. You just, the art looks different, right? The art manifests differently. So again, it's about giving yourself permission and just allowing yourself to you know, follow your fear and really just, you know, let it out.
So as
That's great.
Angela said, we are in the last minute. So if you want to ask a question to Marina Carreira, don't lose this opportunity. You can ask the questions on Zoom or on Facebook, and we will ask Marina. So please put your last questions because we are wrapping it up. And I just wanted to ask you a question, Marina. Do you have new projects, art projects, and if yes, in what are you working right now?
So I'm going to be showing some of the me and Mira photographs. I'm wondering if maybe I could share them really fast. I
Yeah,
think
that'd be great.
yeah, and they will be at a gallery in Newark, actually called ArtFront Gallery, as part of an exhibit called Sotto Voice, or Single Voice. So I'm really excited about that for sure. Let me see if I could share it, and maybe I can show some of those images. And like I said, this series kind of explores my ongoing relationship in sort of investigating my body, what it's supposed to look like after, you know, giving birth, after, you know, my being a teenager, after being a woman, after being a worker, after being a daughter, right? Our bodies change so much. And I really wanted to be able to sort of investigate that and document the ways, you know, in which it does. And so here on the left side, I believe this one's called Womanity. I don't know if I have the titles on here. But this is it's the red and the blue are taken from one of Mira's paintings, and I really wanted to explore all the different sort of roles that are assigned to women, and the expectations that are given to us. And I really wanted to project the feeling of frustration and illness when we can't live up to everything that's expected of us. So this piece will be in that exhibit, as well as this one. You know, when I was pregnant, you know, everybody talks about pregnancy as being this really beautiful, life-changing experience, when really I sort of hated every part of being pregnant. And, you know, I felt really gross and just, you know, swollen and big, and you know, just the idea that one human is coming out of another is really very alien-esque, right? So I really wanted to talk about the parts of pregnancy and motherhood that, you know, we like to romanticize, but really they're terrifying and they're frightening and they're, you know, they're gross, and you know, it's not for everyone. And although it was for me, I very much felt like an alien in my own body. So I wanted to look at maternity and use Mira's figures to sort of translate those feelings of anxiety when it comes to motherhood, and to really say, you know, what is a mother outside of just this vessel, right? And she's a lot of things, and there's sort of words behind her that can talk about all the different things that mothers can be. And this one was me feeling detached from my body, in terms of and my gender, right? I talk a lot about gender, and you know, the more I teach gender studies, so the more I talk about gender and I teach gender, the more I realize that it really is a spectrum, right? And that these ideas of gender are all created. So I really wanted to sort of capture the experience of questioning gender, questioning identity, right? And really disembodying gender and like. So these are 3 examples, 3 pieces that are going to be part of the exhibit in Newark at ArtFront Galleries this fall. So I'm very excited to show that. And then, like I said, it's just full on ahead into the doctoral work. And hopefully.
That work is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And also the fact that you are talking about things that we normally don't talk about. And it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. I have you know, I always say it's my life's mission to make people uncomfortable, or to make people uncomfortable.
Awesome.
And when is the exhibition going to be on?
Oh, I'm so bad at this. I'll tell you in a second.
We'll also post it. If you could send it to us, and that way we'll make sure to share it on Facebook and all our social channels.
Yes, for sure. Do that. Yes.
And where can people find you on social?
So I'm it's at Save the Bathwater. That's on Instagram, but all of my social media stuff, all of my stuff is on hellomarinacarreira.com. That site will lead you to sort of any channels to connect with me.
Great. So with that, we can wrap it. Thank you so much. This has been great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you, Marina, for being here. Thank you very much for this presentation that you did, and like replying to all the questions that we had.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to ask people to visit the Portuguese American Art Gallery at PortugueseAmericanArtGallery.com. And you can also see Marina's works, the ones that she shared here today, and the other Luso-American, Portuguese American artists. Yes, and we hope to get more Portuguese American artists as well in the gallery. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you all soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye. Have a good evening.